Hey, what's up guys? Rob of Rule of Two Review here, and I wanted to talk about some of these quotes from Shigeru Miyamoto that came out about 2 days ago discussing the Wii U and its price point and if that's affected any of the quote-unquote struggles that the Wii U has seen as far as sales not really being able to live up to what was expected, to the competition with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And I thought that it was pretty interesting. Now, there's a lot of quotes here to read. It's kind of a pretty long set of 4 quotes that I want to read all together, and then I'll kind of discuss my thoughts, because even before the Wii U released, I had a thought on the price and how Nintendo should be pricing their systems based on perception as well as what's also, of course, in the machine. And I think that this kind of, lends a lot of credence to what I was saying, and it really spells a lot. It kind of details a lot of what Nintendo is thinking as far as where they're going to be going with their next system with the NX based on what the Wii U has done. So here are, like I said, a long list of quotes that Miyamoto just came out with. So unfortunately, with our latest system, the Wii U, the price point was one that ended up getting a little higher than we wanted. But what we are always striving to do is to find a way to take novel technology that we can take and offer it to people at a price point that everyone can afford. And in addition to that, rather than going after the high-end tech spec race and trying to create the most powerful console, really what we want to do is try to find a console that has the best balance of features with the best interface that anyone can use. But really what's most important to us is how do we create a system that is both unique and affordable so that everyone can afford it and everyone can enjoy it. So I don't think it's just price, because if the system is appealing enough, people will buy it even if the price is a little bit high. I totally agree with that, by the way. I think with the Wii U, our challenge was that perhaps people didn't understand the system. But also I think that we had a system that's very unique, and particularly with video game systems, typically it takes the game system a while to boot up. And we thought that with the tablet-type functionality connected to the system, you could have a rapid boot up of a tablet-type functionality. You could have the convenience of having that touch control with you there on the couch while you're playing on a device that's connected to the TV, and it would be a very unique system that could introduce some unique styles of play. I think unfortunately what ended up happening was that tablets themselves appeared in the marketplace and evolved very, very rapidly. And unfortunately the Wii U system launched at a time where the uniqueness of those features were perhaps not as strong as they were when we had first begun developing them. So what I think is unique about Nintendo is we're constantly trying to do unique and different things. Sometimes they work, and sometimes they're not as big of a hit as we would like to hope. After Wii U, we're hoping that the next time it will be a very big hit. So there you go. A lot of quotes there, a lot to look at and dissect, and you can tell that the translation wasn't 100%. I read that word for word, so some of the oddness of the sentences kind of came from that, and it was actually really a struggle to read because of the weird English translation, so sorry about that. But ultimately, you can get what he's getting at. It ultimately sounds like Nintendo was thinking about features versus standard game systems and price versus value and what they're going to do with their next system, with the NX, because the Wii U is a system that hasn't done well. Despite being a really good system, we know that it's less powerful than its direct competition, but still it launched at a price point of $350. It's since dropped to $300. Some people thought it might drop price at E3, and I don't really believe that that should happen. But with this last E3, it probably would have been a good idea for them to do that. However, they didn't, and that's totally fine. And they're just trying to analyze. I think that they're analyzing a couple of things. What are we going to do with this next system, and how much do we need to charge for it? So like I said, he brought up a couple of good points that I really liked. One of the major points he touched on was the idea that I get that a lot of people think, oh, you should make a really cheap system, or even Nintendo says they want to make a low price system so that it will be more enticing to people. And I get why that makes sense, because ultimately people want to save money and they want to pay less. And that is true. But I feel like with the video game system market, it's a little bit different. And I'm glad that he touched on this. To me, I feel like when a system costs a good amount of money, it shows that that system has value. I didn't really want, when we were waiting to hear information about the Wii U and how much was it going to cost and what was it going to be like and all these things, blah, blah, blah. I was kind of hoping to hear that they were going to be charging like $400 for it. And not because I wanted to pay more money, or I wanted to pay $400. But to me, that would have signified that the system probably had some meat to it or some significance, or that it's worth that price. Basically, you don't want to overcharge, but you don't want to undercharge either. To me, the Xbox One was being overcharged, overpriced when it first launched with the Kinect, and that was a huge problem. Now it's at $350, $400, and that's about accurate for what that system is and can do. But I feel like if the system really was worth $500, that they should be able to charge that price and charge it confidently. Same with Nintendo. He mentions how, I want to find the exact quote. I think that with the Wii U, because he says, I don't think that it's just price, because if the system is appealing enough, people will buy it even if the price is a little bit high. Yes, that's what I'm getting at. Ultimately, you can charge the right price if the system is actually worth it. And it takes confidence and conviction in your message and your platform to be able to sell it at a high price and know that it's actually worth it. And you build that value by, of course, putting in internal guts that actually is worth that. You want as far as processing speed, computer power, graphics power, all these things. I don't really know a lot of the technical jargon, but if internally the system has a high value, you sell it for high value. If it has something else, like in the Wii U's case, a tablet controller or some external piece of technology, even the Kinect, for example, you charge a little bit more. If you just know the system is going to have the value based on the library sometimes and what it can do that the other systems can't do, then you charge a little bit more for it. And to me, a system needs to be able to justify those prices, but I don't think that you should undercharge or undercut just to be able to sell this cheapest system. And in Nintendo's case, because we're coming off of 2 generations in a row where they kept a little bit of the beef out of the systems to be able to sell it lower, when they talk about selling the next system at the affordable price that they're talking about, it makes me a little bit nervous that they might be thinking about, again, keeping it, I guess, underpowered or whatever term, behind the curve a little bit, or sacrificing some really important key things just to make it cheaper. And it's like, you know what? I know it's worked here and there in the past, and saving money is always a good thing, especially for gamers, but don't do that. Nintendo, I just want you to make an amazing kick-ass system that you can believe in and that we can believe in as the gamers, and trust me, people will buy it. Look at Sony. They have a system that doesn't have a great library that's been selling crazy because they just sold it right and they knew how to make it a quality system. Like, the box itself is very quality, even if the library hasn't been so yet. So Nintendo, you can do the same thing. You've done it before with the Nintendo 64 and the Super Nintendo and even the GameCube. And even with the GameCube, it was actually sold for less money than the PS2 or the Xbox One, or the Xbox One, oh my god, the original Xbox, even though it could do better things than some of those systems can do. It had more power than the PS2. So ultimately what he's getting at here, I don't want to tear this quote apart because this is actually all great information, and I like where his head is at and where it seems like Nintendo's head is at. But what it ultimately comes down to is kind of what he said, the balance. Power versus lack of power, price versus value. What are they going to do? And I don't quite know the answer. To me, it sounds like they might be thinking, do we even do anything kooky with our next system, or do we just make it a regular old gaming machine with a regular old controller, make that beefy, and that's where we put our money, not in a tablet controller, but just in the guts of the system, and sell it for a high price in that way because it's going to be an amazing piece of technology. I would be okay with either. I thought the Wii was great, and I love that controller. I think the Wii U is fantastic. I love the gamepad. So if they did something unique for the next system, awesome. Nintendo knows how to innovate, and it's usually, not always, but usually is a great thing. So I like to think of what they could do with the NX, but at the same time, it might be time now, even for one generation cycle. I think the time is now to not do that. And maybe this is what he's talking about. And maybe it's what Reggie was hinting at with the whole talk about transition in the beginning of their E3 digital event. Maybe they're going to cut the flack. They're not going to do anything super kooky. Maybe it's some small touches, but I don't think they're going to do anything such as build a system's gameplay functionality around this unique controller we've never tried before. And maybe they're just going to make a really great system and charge a legitimate price for it. And I feel like if you charge that price, it tells people this is a next-gen thing. This is doing new things visually and internally that previously you'd never been able to do. It's a great way to sell people on the next generation, is because, and I know it sucks again for us gamers because we don't want to spend a lot of money on these things, but it's a great way to convince people that you actually have a system that's worthwhile. Sell it for a good amount of money. Again, at the same time, we will call bullshit, as the Xbox One proved. Gamers called bullshit, didn't buy that system like Microsoft wanted until they pulled out the Kinect and dropped the price. So it can backfire when you're doing this, concept as well. It really takes a smart mind and a business-savvy company to know how to execute it well. And I think Nintendo is that. And I think that they've learned a lot of lessons with the Wii U, a ton of lessons. And if they carry that mentality plus everything Miyamoto is talking about here, I think that they will hopefully knock it out of the park with the next system, or at least do very, very well for themselves, much better than the Wii U did, make the right kind of system that appeals to all the right kinds of gamers, sell it at the appropriate price, and make a lot of money. That's what we can hope. That's what I think. So I don't know. Those are my quick thoughts on all of these quotes. I think there's a lot of information to be gleaned here. Like I said, I like where Miyamoto's head is at overall, and I like where it seems like Nintendo's head is at. Even though we're coming off of a really bad E3, I think that this could hopefully spell good things for the future, but you never know, and we're just going to have to wait and see. So that's it, Thanks for tuning in. What are your guys' thoughts? Share your thoughts about all this stuff below. I want to know if you think that this is good or bad for Nintendo. What is it you are deciphering these quotes to mean? There's, I think, a lot of different ways that we can look at this stuff. So, that's pretty much it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I always appreciate the viewers, and I'll catch you guys next time.